Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. So, before we get into today's episode, I have a question for you. What would it be like if you could take a cocktail every morning that could dramatically reduce your risk of heart disease, obesity, diabetes, neurological disease, cancer, and simultaneously boost your mood, your resilience, and your energy levels? Well, for the last 2 years, I have, with the help of many of my friends, colleagues, experts in nutrition and nutritional supplements, been formulating four absolutely cutting edge, breakthrough, incredibly powerful supplements for four main things. And those things are: one, Energenesis is the most powerful mitochondrial enhancing supplement on the market for long-term energy production. Ultra Brain is the most powerful natural nootropic supplement for brain performance, cognitive performance, as well as mood optimization and long-term brain health simultaneously. We've got Immune Genesis, our latest supplement, which is all about, of course, supercharging immune function, which everybody wants to do right now. And we've got Energy Essentials and Superfoods, which is a comprehensive, ultra premium multivitamin and multi-mineral with all of the best forms of those vitamins and minerals, not the cheapy stuff that you find in common multivitamin and mineral supplements. And it's got a ton of amazing superfoods with proven metabolic benefits, things like spirulina, chlorella, pomegranate, and many, many others. So these are, within their respective four categories, bar none, the best supplements in those categories. And if you compare the dosages and the ingredients used to any other supplements within those categories, you will absolutely see that for yourself. And I encourage you to do that. So anyway, this is to let you know about those four supplements. If you don't already know about them, head over to store.theenergyblueprint.com and go check out the ingredients. We've put together pages with all of the ingredients, with all of the research on all of those ingredients. These are not just typical, sales pages with a lot of hype and claims. We're just showing you the actual research behind all of these ingredients that are in these formulations. They are incredibly powerful. We get incredible testimonials virtually every day from people using these supplements. And for many people, they're absolutely life-changing. So go check them out, get on these supplements. Like I said, this is a cocktail that you can use. And there's proven science to show that this cocktail can dramatically reduce your risk of numerous diseases while simultaneously boosting your mood and energy levels in a hugely powerful way. So go check it out, store.theenergyblueprint.com. Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. I am very excited for today's guest. This is somebody whose work I've been following a lot for the last year, and he's become a great voice for natural health and has a lot of novel insights into this topic, and especially in this craziness of the COVID era. And I've really appreciated a lot of the insights and the perspective that he's been sharing over the last year. So his official bio, he's the founder of Wellness Force Media, the host of the Wellness Force podcast, and the creator of the Breathe, Breath, and Wellness program. Josh has spent the past 18 years as a trainer, researcher, and facilitator discovering the physical and emotional intelligence for humans to thrive in our modern world. The Wellness Force mission is to help humans heal mental, emotional, and physical health through podcasts, programs, and a global community that believes in optimizing our potential to live life well. His life is dedicated to supporting humanity coming together as one. And if I didn't mention his name at the beginning of this, it's Josh Trent. So Josh, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to finally connect with you, not via Facebook likes and commenting on each other's posts, but
That's right.
but via an actual live meeting.
Yeah, Ari, thank you for having me, man. I respect the work that you've created in this world and this incredible community that's like, hey, how do I be the energy that the world deserves? And I really love your messaging. I love what you've created. So super honored to share space with you. And what I believe will come from this is gems that people can actually feel and then eventually do, and then become their greatest self, man. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The feeling is very mutual. So let's talk about breath work. This is a fascinating subject. It's something that has been a passion of mine over the years as well, but I think you've delved into it even deeper than I have. And why don't you give us the broad overview of how you got into breath work and what you feel the biggest benefits of a breath work practice is?
Well,
Or
the breath saved my life. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was raised by a bipolar mom, and my dad left home super early. So, whatever my soul contract is, I came here on planet Earth to receive some pretty unique contrast, as most of us do. And along the way, I developed this really poor relationship with food, which is a drug that people self prescribe. And no surprise, without the right psychological tools, Ari, and without the right physical tools, I'm 280 pounds at 21 years old.
Whoa.
And I just really hated myself. And I didn't even know what self love was. The concept was so out in the stratosphere that I couldn't have even found it on a map if you pointed it to me. And I got to this point where I was hating my body so much. I was in a relationship that I hated. I was in a job that I hated. I was actually a Mercedes-Benz technician. So I was a luxury auto technician at my early 20s. And I got to this point, and I think we all can relate to this, where I just knew that I didn't want to be here anymore. I'm not talking about thoughts of suicide, but I'm talking about, God, give me strength. Spirit, give me strength. Someone show me the way. And the moment came when I was drinking a beer at a party, and I was 21 years old, coming on 22. I looked down at my gut. My belly was hanging over, and I just slammed the cup down. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever really had a connection to spirit, to something greater. And this ticker tape message flew across my consciousness, and the ticker tape said, there's more to life than this. There's just quite simply more to life than this. And I looked up at the sky with my limited awareness, and I just asked God, like, what do you want me to do? Because I don't want to be here anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I got this message to go home. And so I slammed the cup down. I ran home drunk for like 3 miles, showed up at the house, pulled open my HP 25-pound computer at the time. This is like 2001. And I think I typed in, like, how do I be healthy? And that led me on an 18-month journey of low carb, ketogenic, high carb, anything you could imagine as far as diet application. And I got to this place where I lost almost 100 pounds, then I gained 60 back. Just a real tug on the soul, just a real drain on my etheric and also my energetic body. And I got to this place where I was just so out of sorts with who I was and unconnected to myself, and using, honestly, the wrong fuel source to find love, that I just left. I said, I'm going to go to Hawaii. I sold everything I owned. At 24, 25 years old, I got to Hawaii, and I hiked and I surfed and I fished, and I just started to absorb this incredible feminine energy from Oahu. And I started to really look at healing myself and really start even understanding, how do I take control of my health, which I believe fitness is the gateway to wellness. I was in the fitness industry for 10 years. I maintained a great level of health, but there was always something missing. And what was calling me was this true integration and embodiment of loving myself, knowing how to manage my energetic systems properly, and doing it from a place of calm confidence. And it wasn't until I found the breath, I left fitness, I went to corporate America because I, quote, wanted a safe job. I fell into that trap. And when I got fired from corporate America in 2014, 2015, it was the most liberating moment of my life. I went into many plant medicine ceremonies, and I found the breath actually through Mark Divine from Unbeatable Mind and Seal Fit. And I'll never forget this, Ari. I was laying on the floor doing the warrior breathing in 2016, and I started crying, and I was like, why am I crying? This doesn't make any sense. Why are tears coming out of my eyes, but I don't understand where they're coming from? Later, I found out that Bruce Lipton is obviously someone that you and I know of. The issues are in the tissues. So I was accessing very deep stored trauma that I had no idea was there. that led me on a next 3-year journey of going to Thailand for 30 days and training with Soma Breath and doing a week intensive with Gwen Payne in Sedona and learning from Anahata in Sedona and just really covering the globe. Also going to Costa Rica and learning from Christian Minson and just getting as many practitioners as I could so that I could start embodying so that I could actually teach. And that's what led me to the breath. And really the breath saved my life because in the course of my life, I've struggled with anxiety quite a bit. And as you and I both know, anxiety is a focus on the future. So the breath has a very visceral power of centering us in the present moment so that either depression or anxiety does not biologically take us for a ride. And so that's the kind of quick story of how I found the breath.
So you mentioned Bruce Lipton, you mentioned the issues are in the tissues. Talk to me about the physiology, biochemistry, what is going on that is actually connecting the breath and stored trauma or emotional memories in our body.
This is what I love, and it's such an awesome question because not many people ask that question, so it's really, really cool. The science and the spirit of what's going on with breathing. If you look at the Latin etymology of breath, it's in spiritus. So it means to actually breathe life from you and within you. So we are not the only ones breathing us. There is something that beats our heart, digests our food, breathes us. And so we have this autonomic processes that happen in our body, and it's known as the autonomic nervous system. And I believe your audience has heard this many times before, but it's a good refresher. These two branches of the autonomic, there is the parasympathetic branch, which is like our rest, our digest, our love, our connection, our smoothness. And then there's the sympathetic, which is like, oh shit, I'm running from a tiger. I don't know if I can cuss on your show. I'm running from a tiger right now. I need to be in fight, flight, or freeze, actually. And freeze is one we can talk about. So what comes to happen in freeze is from a young age, we have what's called a soul split. We all come into this world very pure, and we learn from either parental or societal example that we can't trust ourselves and that we're not enough and that we're not loved, which is the biggest illusion and fallacy that we all drink from. We drink from this river of forgetfulness, as mentioned in the Logos and the religious text. And when we drink from that river of forgetfulness, we just straight up forget how awesome we are. We forget how loving we are. We forget how much energy we actually hold within ourselves. And we become laden down with all of these hooks from people and past life and all these things. Why am I saying this? Because when you access the breath, you start tapping into the capital T trauma and the lowercase t trauma within your energetic system, within your nervous system. The most powerful thing I can say about the breath as I lay on that first layer of the autonomic nervous system is that when you properly do breath work, and I mean like facilitated box, facilitated circular breathing, catharsis breathing, and we can talk later in this conversation about the different types of breath. But man, when you go to a place where you give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling, and you start to use your diaphragm, your vagus nerve, your enteric nervous system, and everything that goes on when you start doing powerful cyclical breathing, all the things you forgot that happened for you, whether it's capital T or lowercase t, they float to the surface. And that's why Bruce Lipton talks about the issues are in the tissues. Well, how do you access the issues? You have to move the energy through the tissues. And the only real way you can move energy through the tissues is somatic experiencing, either through breath or movement, or some type of facilitated spiritual guided process where someone that's highly skilled can actually move the energy for you. Most of us don't have access to those people. So we have the breath and we have movement. We have this afferent and efferent nervous system signals that go from our brain to all of our nerve endings in our hands and our body. When you start doing the breath properly, you start accessing all the trauma that has occurred so you can like finally once and for all address it, integrate it, and then let it go.
What does it look like in the context of a breathwork session to access trauma? And what does that feel like subjectively? And then how does that translate into letting it go? Does it just, the letting go happen as a result of the breath work? Or is it a matter of it brings it up consciously and now you have a chance to process it cognitively or intellectually? Expand upon that, what's going on there.
It's fantastic because if we intellectualize healing, we'll never heal. We cannot solve a physical, spiritual, connected problem by only using the mind. And I fell into that trap for a long time. I would go to like all the seminars and read all the books and listen to all the podcasts. I was stuck in what I call the gathering phase of true intelligence. And I promise I'll answer your question, but the reason that I'm going to say this first is because all of us fall into this trap of, if I have the degree, if I have the books, if I have the training, then somehow I'm going to get the result that I want. But what everyone falls into the illusion of is that they actually have to go through 3 phases of the intelligence journey, much like separation, initiation, and return from Joseph Campbell. We all must go through the application process after we gather. And applying means actually going and doing the breath work and feeling what it's like to not have your mind control what's coming up, and feeling what it's like to have your body give you those afferent and efferent signals so that you actually know what they are. If you try to intellectualize, you're stuck in that gathering phase. And then, Ari, at the end of it, what we're all really working on is we're all wanting to have embodiment. And so we gather, we apply, then we embody. And when we embody, there's no way you can fake it. You're around somebody and you can just sense like they have peace, or they're intelligent, or the way they carry themselves. It's because they've done the work to embody their gathering and application. And what breathwork does for all of us is it teaches us how to apply our knowledge, because knowledge without application is honestly the same thing as not knowing. So you can know all these things, but if you're not applying them, then you really don't have any experiential learning of healing or of transcending from the lower self. So to button your question, essentially, the way that we come to terms with what's coming up when we breathe is that we first of all learn the strategies and techniques of how to turn off the mind, so that we're not stuck in our mind when our somatic experience is trying to direct us towards where the healing lives. That's how we actually do it.
Got it. So you created a breathwork program. It's called Breathe, the Breath and Wellness Program. Why? Why did you create this? You mentioned a bunch of teachers that you've learned from. Several of them have programs out there. What made you feel like was it that you had a novel take on it, or you put some novel pieces together? What made you, what catalyzed you and motivated you to create this program?
Well, the big one was that I wanted to find peace within myself. So just like every creator or influencer, which is an interesting name, right? Influencer. But just like any human who wants to teach, they can only teach from what they themselves have embodied. So I gave myself the most powerful reminder until I die, and that is, se posso respirare, posso scegliere. And what that means in Italian is, if I can breathe, I can choose. It's tattooed on my body so that I will remember to consistently embody my own work. So that every day when I'm having a moment with my love, or I have a child on the way, right? I have a baby that's coming soon. So when I'm flustered, when I'm stressed, when I am essentially, not to be too reductionistic, when I'm not coming from love and I'm coming from fear, it's a reminder to do my work, that I share and that I teach others to do. And so that's the se posso respirare, posso scegliere, is like, okay, can I say that to myself in a moment? Can I train myself to go to my breath as an ally, as truly, Ari, like the only unconscious autonomic lever we can pull for our nervous system? It's the only thing we can do. We can't make our heart beat faster, although I think some monks can do that. The average person can't. We can't digest our food faster. We can control our breath because we can identify when we're in that stress point. And we can choose. I mean, literally, if we can breathe, we can choose. And that's my mission in the world. That's why I created the program, because I took the 3.5, almost 4 years to go travel and go through the tears and go through the shaking and have the hypoxia and have, honestly, a couple times almost throwing up from cathartic breathing sessions, and go to Thailand and travel the world and create what I believe to be an amalgam of some of the greatest teachers in the world for no other reason than to honor them, to credit them, and to continue it on and pass the torch so that everyone can use the power of the breath. That's honestly why I created the program.
Gotcha. So I have so many questions buzzing through my mind now. I'm not sure where to go with this. Let me ask you this.
We can start with the breath.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is a personal question. something that I experienced, and I don't know that I've ever seen someone who has spoken to this. I'm curious if you might have some thoughts on it, given that you've explored this area so deeply. Um, I've been doing, guided breath work for probably over 20 years now. I got into meditation in my teens now, and I'm 37 now, and I've experimented with all kinds of esoteric yogas and qigong and pranayama practices and hormetic breath holding practices, all kinds of things. But early on in my early 20s, I did so much intentional breathing practices where you learn belly breathing, and you study these esoteric Eastern traditions, and they say, oh, you have to learn to breathe through your belly. And I got into this pattern where I convinced myself that I was not breathing properly. I became hyper conscious of this, and I would say even neurotic about it, where I felt like I needed to control my breathing all the time and make sure that I was like breathing into my belly. And so I would try to make almost every breath throughout the entire day, like almost every waking moment, to be conscious of it and breathe into my belly. And I think in the process, I don't know exactly what it was, but my perception became that this autonomic process of breathing that should be happening subconsciously, I put so much conscious attention on it that it felt like it wasn't happening well unless I put conscious attention on it. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But basically there was a certain like neuroticism and tension that developed, and like hyper awareness and attentiveness around my breathing constantly. Yes. And well, I could go on, and I it was actually resolved at some point in the context of a plant medicine journey, but I will this went on for years before that. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, if that resonates at all, or you can make sense of that.
It's a huge question. Allow me to just organically pontificate with you for a moment and also deliver some science. You actually just spoke in human language what I talked about of people intellectualizing their healing, because there might be some kind of anchor that was created for you in early childhood or adolescence or whatever it is. And that is, as long as I'm doing what is right or what I should be doing, then I will have peace. But that is creating an external locus of control instead of an internal locus of control. And essentially from what I'm sharing, and I don't know you really, I'm just getting to know you right now, which is awesome. But what it brings up for me is the awareness of the potential of what might be existing is an intellectualization of relaxation or an intellectualization of healing. And we all fall into this trap. I mean, I drew tarot cards for a long time, and I worked with mediums and all these things. And they always told me the same thing: Josh, you're ruled by the king of the mind. And I was like, duh. Why do you think I have so much anxiety? Because I'm constantly trying to like prove that the present moment is safe.
Yeah.
And as I try to prove that the present moment is safe, I actually am disconnecting from the fact that the present moment is safe. As long as I let go. It's actually what Hawkins talks about in his work, and this is a valuable resource for all of us. If we can truly embody the process of letting go, seeing things for what they really are, and breathing into the truth of the current moment, not in a woo-woo sit around the fireplace kind of a way, but I mean like realistically, if we can surrender to, we're all going to die. You and I get this special moment right now to share. We're not going to be here forever. And if we can just relax into that, then we can stop getting in our head, get out of our head and get into our heart. Hawkins talks about the largest space between our head and our heart is universal. We all experience either an inch or a mile between our head and our heart. And it's a byproduct of what all of our teachers that we follow, whether ancient or contemporary, if you look at Lao Tzu, or if you look at Alan Watts, or if you look at anyone who talks about spirituality or metaphysics, they're all essentially saying the same thing with different words. And that is, your training is to be at peace in the current moment without judgment of yourself. And so the breath allows us to do that, but only if we have the courage to see what mechanism is trying to intellectually control us in the first place. Because I'll tell you what, the ego is a subtle foe The ego will come in, it will sabotage, it will tell you things about people that aren't true. It will tell you you're not safe. It will do so many things. And I'm not here to demonize the ego. Our work is actually to be in harmony with the ego. And that's easier said than done because, again, this can't be intellectualized, right? We can't intellectualize an issue that's caused by either our lack of love for ourselves or our lack of connection with spirit. We just can't get around it. So that's the first part to your question is like, okay, I would layer a lens on there of what happened to me and what kind of an emotional intelligence or emotional inventory process can I do from the observation standpoint, like way outside the subjective, and go, all right, let me take an inventory of what were my biggest triggers in my life. Let me list those out and let me be curious about how they're playing out in my current life. How are my deepest triggers playing out in my current life? And which one of those triggers takes away my breath completely? Which one of those triggers, when I think about it or when I feel into it, it makes me go, it makes me hold my breath. That's a great starting point for all of us. And the courage to walk that path is honestly not for everyone, because when you go into the cave, and you know this from plant medicine, you are going to find things that scare the crap out of you. They are going to bring you to your knees in so many ways. And that is where real warriors are built, not from just doing plant medicine. I have my own thoughts on plant medicine, which is a unique conversation. But the long answer to your short question of why do I do that is it stems from how we were raised. It stems from how we integrated or did not integrate the capital T, lowercase t trauma. And it stems to how our biology operates in the current moment based on all the imprinting that we had done for us in the past.
Very, very interesting. I'd be interested to go into the plant medicine discussion, and I'll mention actually how this issue of breathing translated to an experience. I was going to label it a problem, but I'll label it an experience with my first plant medicine journey, which was extraordinarily intense. It was what's considered to be the most powerful or intense of the psychedelics, which is 5-MeO-DMT. And that was my very first journey. I don't recommend that anybody do that as their first journey.
I don't either.
And I recommend something much gentler as the first one.
Uh-huh.
But the experience of that actually, and I'm quite certain that it's connected to that sort of hyper attentiveness that I had around my breathing. When I did that 5-MeO experience, what happened was a process of literally the experience of feeling my body go paralyzed and feeling my diaphragm go paralyzed and feeling like I could not breathe and not hallucinating this. I was perfectly lucid and I was aware of everything going on. And I was having the experience of feeling like my diaphragm was becoming paralyzed and my breath was getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And as much as I was trying to generate that attentiveness to my breath to breathe properly, I couldn't. And I was literally calling over the facilitator, the shaman of this journey, to tell him to call an ambulance, because I could see it. The people next to me were moving and they could breathe and they could talk and they were making noise. And I was sitting there becoming paralyzed and losing the ability to breathe. So I thought I was having actually some kind of allergic reaction to it. I was telling the guy to call an ambulance because I'm literally about to suffocate to death. And then to make a long story short, basically I had the very, very terrifying experience of literally watching myself suffocate to death and having to process the fact that I was suffocating and I was dying in that moment. And then after accepting that I was dying in that process, I was transported to a really beautiful, incredible, ecstatic experience that was extraordinarily revelatory and probably one of the most intense and profound experiences of my life that had enormous benefits. But it was also, prior to that, the most terrifying experience I've had in my life.
They usually are.
Yeah, and I still have this feeling like all that intentional breath work I did, that hyper-attentiveness, that neuroticism, played some role in contributing to that experience. I bring this up just in case you have any commentary on it.
I love it. Thank you for being so courageous and sharing all this. Yeah, I can sense, and I'm not a psychic, and I'm what I call practical woo. So like I understand that there's an etheric realm and a 4 and 5D. I don't spend a lot of time there. The only times I go there is to gain knowledge and bring it back here. So I don't like to play in those realms like a lot of my colleagues. I'm not going to name anyone in person, but I've watched myself have judgment for people that go from ceremony to ceremony to ceremony and don't ever pause to breathe and integrate. And if you look at any of the great masters, whether it's Terence McKenna or Paul Stamets or even Paul Chek, if you don't have time to clear the ceremony and to actually integrate what has occurred, by the way, I'm still integrating a ceremony from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel called to any other ceremonies or medicines. I have my breath as my ally. So what happens is, if we're not careful, and this might be what you're talking about, so tell me if I'm on the right path. When we experience some type of a key stressor that floods our system into like essentially a panic mode, right? Like you dying in a 5-ameo ceremony, that takes time to heal. It takes time to reintegrate back into society, much like a war veteran would have PTSD from a bomb going off. We have to give our nervous system, our heart, our soul, and our mind, most importantly, time to recover from something like that. Because really what all of those elements of us are asking for is love and tenderness and softness and presence. And if we don't give those parts of ourselves, those attributes that I talked about, what happens is that we start operating even more from the mind, and we can honestly have a neuroses come from it, like a mild mental illness or, like an OCD with looping thoughts, things like that. That's what happened to me, by the way, 2 years ago, as I went to the wrong center down in Costa Rica. I'm not going to name the name, but y'all know if you follow me who it is. And I went to the wrong place and I took the wrong medicine at the wrong time. And it was beautiful because it healed me of something that I had been fighting for so long. And it actually taught me how not to fight anymore. But just like you had said, before I was able to see the light of love within myself and able to connect with God, I had to go through the darkness within myself. And that darkness, whoo, oh my God. Just like how you almost died and you're like, I had to watch myself basically choke and asphyxiate myself. That was what I had to do, but it was on a way more mental level with different kinds of loops that weren't so physiological. What I'm saying in a really long answer here is that if we go 30,000 foot above our subject, which is ourself, the subjective truth that we're experiencing is not always the objective truth that either God or spirit or even your higher self can recognize that's occurring for you. So when you were going through what you were going through, you must believe the only path towards enlightenment, the only path towards consciousness, the only path towards growth of any kind is that you will choose to believe that that happened for you. And the trauma that you experienced will be something that you choose to love yourself to integrate through. And that is a fraction of the population that either has the tools, the skills, or even the self-love to love and nurture and be tender to themselves after they've been through honestly a life-altering event. And this is why it's so powerful. If you look at Jordan Peterson's work, or Tim Ferriss just put out a huge blog on this, and he basically said, look, if you're doing these medicines and there's not the right integration set and setting, you are actually going to cause yourself way more trauma than if you just didn't do the medicine at all. People are running to medicine. I'm not saying you and I are doing this, but people are running to the medicine, to the plants of any kind, because they're seeking the plant's wisdom. But the greatest thing that I can wrap up my answer with is this: be careful of unearned wisdom. Be cautious and be careful of unearned wisdom. If you have not created the breathing patterns within yourself, if you've not done the emotional intelligence work of taking the inventory of capital T and lowercase t trauma, and you run to a plant medicine ceremony, look the hell out. And that's a direct quote from Peterson himself. Look the hell out, because you're opening yourself up to so many dimensions, so many entities. I actually took on an entity from that place in Costa Rica. It took me 2 years to heal it. Had to go see Paul Chek himself at his house so that he could clear the entity from me. And then I have Hamilton Souther on the podcast, and he's telling me anytime someone has an entity, it is not their fault. It is 100% the shaman's fault. When anything happens to a participant in a ceremony, it is not anyone's fault but the person that is holding that space. And so it's not to demonize practitioners, but we're talking about a power of which we cannot even begin to understand.
Yeah.
And we are playing with this power as if we can earn this early wisdom when we haven't done the deep integration work to hold it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a fascinating answer. In my case, there wasn't any sort of trauma from it. It was extremely terrifying in that moment.
Yes.
And then it immediately, after the surrender into suffocating, it immediately turned into an extraordinarily revelatory and blissful experience that as soon as I came out of that several hours later, so there was multiple rounds of it.
Sure.
So it was about 3 hours in total. I was already in a beautiful place and like just amazed. I mean, it completely blew my mind that it's possible for human consciousness to even experience something like that. I mean, it was 1,000 orders of magnitude beyond what I thought was possible to even have an experience of. And there's no way I could have even imagined it in my wildest dreams, what actually happened. And it was a life-changing, really beautiful experience that actually took me out of a years-long depression prior to that. So anyway,
That's
thank
powerful.
you for
That's so
indulging
powerful,
me in this little digression.
Can I say one more thing on that? Because it's so beautiful what you're describing. Not everyone can have what you have learned. So there was obviously some type of work that you've done, whether it's around energy systems or cultivation from chi or even learning from the chakras behind me, like how energy flows through the body. There was some training that you had done that prepared you to be able to receive the healing that you got. Not everyone's prepared.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I want to be very cautious about
meditation and breath work prior to that.
Yes. So that's something I want to share with your audience is like, be careful and be kind to yourself. Don't run to the golden ticket without doing your integration work first.
Yeah, and I would almost have the general warning of like almost no one should do that substance unless you are extremely experienced.
Yes.
And have done many years of work.
You know what else came up for me? I was interviewing Dave Asprey once, and he talked about the umbilical cord being wrapped around his neck when he was a baby, and he went to a therapist, a past life therapist, or some kind of an intelligent therapist. I'm not exactly sure what kind, but that was what came up for him. And I want to point people towards Mark Wolin's work. He's been on the podcast a couple times. He wrote "It Didn't Start With You: Healing Generational Trauma." For your key attribute, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to focus on my breath. And for me, it's like, I'm not safe in the present moment. We all have our stuff. And so looking at not only the current moment for clues with emotional inventory, but also looking at birth and birth trauma and looking at past life trauma. In other words, epigenetic expression of unhealed trauma from your grandfather, father, and et cetera. Yeah. So it's complex. Healing is complex because we as human beings are complex.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought up the umbilical cord. The same thing for me, that I had it wrapped around and I actually almost died in my birth process, and they had to break my clavicle when I was.
Wow.
I don't know I'm not sure if it broke on its own or if they intentionally broke it, but I know that I was born with a broken clavicle.
It may be a connection to what exactly you're describing then, because, and I'm not a therapist in this way, so I'm not classified to give this kind of guidance or information, but I'm just thinking here with you, it may be connected to that where, you felt like you couldn't breathe or you had to focus so much on your breathing. Think of a flower, when a flower first buds, it's so sensitive. So if you come along and do anything to that rosebud, it alters its life forever. This is why the first year, 0 through 7, is where we learn all of our habits. And it actually goes to the breath too, Ari. If you ever plug a baby's nose, they'll start choking. Why is that? If you plug a baby's nose, why do they start choking? It's because we all come into this world knowing how to breathe through our nose. We learn through capital T and lowercase t trauma to start breathing through our mouth. Then we start becoming, as Belisa Vranich calls, vertical breathers. We start breathing through our shoulders and our scalenes, and we lose the connection to our diaphragm. You'll notice that as I listen to you speak, I'll close my mouth because I'll remind myself to push my tongue to the roof and to breathe through my nose because it's relaxing for me to do that. But if I'm stressed, you might catch me with my mouth open.
Yeah.
You might catch me, breathing through my mouth. So it's a key indicator of a lot of different things that are connecting in our conversation.
Yeah. Josh, let me ask you real quick. Are you doing okay on time? Do you have a hard cutoff?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So one other quick thing I'll just mention to wrap up this digression in plant medicines, and I'm super open to you saying anything more you want to say, but I want to speak, like kind of wrap up my personal story. So after that experience, my mind was so blown with what had happened to me, and I benefited enormously from it. But there was still a piece of me that was, that drove me a little bit crazy, that the experience caused so much intense fear for me. And I mean, I had, my heart was beating out of my chest. I slept for, I think, 16 hours after that experience, because I had like the most crazy adrenaline dump ever to actually feel like you're dying. It's like, it's as stressful as it gets.
Yeah.
And, but it drove me crazy for months after that I was so scared by it and scared to do it again, because I didn't want to have to go through that. And so because I was scared of it, I sought it out again, because it just drove me crazy to be scared of something. And so I did a second time, I think 3 or 4 months later. And this time I thought, oh, I've already dealt with the whole fear of death thing. I won't have to go through that again. Sure enough, I had to go through the whole thing again, a second time, and watch myself suffocate to death. It was not any easier. I thought for sure it would be easier. It was not. It was it was the same level of difficulty to watch the body and the ego die. And then I was still driven, also a beautiful experience, but still driven a little crazy, that I was fearful. And I just kept feeling like I need to get to a point where I can do this experience without needing to die, and be able to relax into this process. And on my third 5-MeO experience, that's when I had this really incredible experience of this teaching around my breathing, and where it was like, why are you so restricted? Why are you so tense around your breathing? Why are you trying to force your breathing all the time? Breathing happens naturally. It happens autonomically, subconsciously, and you don't need to control it. And the message that was communicated to me was, you don't need to force the breathing. Let me breathe you. And which speaks to something that you said at the beginning of this podcast, that, you know, around in spiritus and inspiration. And that was the lesson that allowed me to let go of those years of struggling with tension around my breathing, and just to let it happen naturally, and to bring my neuroticism and attention and sort of OCD out of it, and just let the breath happen. But anyway, I just wanted to
what voice was telling you that it's okay?
I mean, that's a matter, I guess, of speculation. We're getting into very
it's metaphysical,
spiritual territory. But I mean, the experience of 5-MeO feels like having a conversation with God, and like having a conversation with some kind of higher intelligence, where it certainly does not feel like just your own brain talking to itself. It feels like communication with a higher intelligence, and a sort of direct tapping into some bigger truth than the normal sort of thoughts that go on in the brain. And it was, when you're in that state, it feels like, okay, this is truth. This is this wisdom being communicated to me.
Regardless of how anyone identifies, whether you're Christian or atheist or whatever it is, whenever you take a point of reference in the universe or within our current experience, you are deciding that that is true. And I think this is what people get wrong about spirituality. And honestly, I'll even tie it back to the breath, and we can tie it back to energy as well. Because when you're going through your life and you're deciding things every day, Brendon Burchard says we make like 150 quality decisions every day, right? Well, who's deciding those? You are. And you're deciding them based on your lens of reference, which is an amalgam of all the experiences that have happened for you up to that point. So now all the decisions you make after your MEO ceremonies, they're going to be different. They're going to be fundamentally different for you, because you've gained knowledge, you've gained awareness, you've gained understanding. So what I'm saying here is, like, we all go through the path of discernment of what's true and what's not true, what thoughts to fixate on or what thoughts to be at peace with and let go. The key thing is for us to not attach to what has occurred, because, and I fall into this camp for my own learning as well. I'm self-aware enough to know that on the path to mastery, I'm still somewhat in the middle. I really am. And I think most of us are, that even help others to be totally enlightened. When Osho was on his deathbed, he said, nobody can ever be totally enlightened. It's all, he said something like this, there's no such thing as total enlightenment because the ego is always present. And so what I'm getting at here is, like, when we learn about ourselves, either how to breathe from a loving, trustworthy place, or when we learn how to let go and let something else breathe us, we start tapping into an endless river of truth and awareness and energy that we can guide in our relationships, in our jobs, in our professions, in our careers. Because the very thing that we're looking for, it straight up is the thing that's looking for us. Like St. Francis of Assisi, and I got this from the 3-hour segment we did with Paul Chek, which is the All Is God series we did on Wellness Force. And the thing that just ripped my hair back is he was like, one of the earliest practitioners in religion said, what's looking for you is what's looking. What you're looking for is what's looking back at you. So we are all a byproduct of this energetic source that creates all things. And if it sounds woo-woo or esoteric to you, just ask yourself, who's breathing you? Who's digesting your food? Who's beating your heart? Right. Who's doing all these things? Because you're not. So whether you believe in a higher power or not, you have to believe that you don't understand why certain things are. And there's a current surrender to that, which really is kind of what we're talking about.
Totally. Yeah. And in that sense, the experience that I had around the breathing was almost a disconnection from that source and from that realization that you're referring to in what you just said there.
And think about this, when we don't breathe, we're disconnected from our body, and when we're disconnected from our body, we're a slave to our mind, and then we can't access anything spiritually. So it's a very linear connection that may not seem linear, but it is.
Yeah. So let's jump back into breath work. I know that you teach that there are 3 stages of breath work. Talk to me about what those are.
Well, we all have the acute stressors in life. So whether it's a fight with your spouse, or, I mean, I'm sure you never fight with your spouse, but, some of us do. We all go through these learning curves in life where we're learning how to manage other people's programs. One of my mentors and colleagues, Rachel Fiore from the Masters of Self, talks about mental, emotional, and behavioral programs. Those programs were built for us to survive. And so when I'm experiencing a fight with Carrie, with my lady, and she's experiencing my ego, there's an integration and an understanding that, to the degree that I'm not breathing or I'm indulging and allowing myself to be triggered by this person, I'm going to run a program on them. And when I run my program on them, I'm going to completely disassociate from my body. I'm not going to be somatically experiencing love. I'm going to make them wrong. I'm going to blame them for whatever's happening, and I'm going to be right. This is the biggest fallacy of the ego. So what happens in that first stage of breath work is acute stress management. And acute stress management is something that we all need to get better on, truly. I mean, whether you're a speaker or a mom or dad or a CEO or you're an entrepreneur, everybody has, I believe I've read in literature that, like, speaking on stage is, for some people, the same feeling of dying. It's right up there with the fear of death. Well, why is that? Why is that true? And how can we use the breath? This is a key point of talking. How can we use acute stress management breathing techniques so that we can transcend from whatever program is running? I'm not safe. I'm not enough. I'm stupid. Look how ugly I am. I'm fat. My face looks like this. My pants suck. Fill in the blank. I mean, you could hit the floor with this list of things that comes up in people's consciousness. But the reason is that we are believing whatever the programs are, and we're not breathing. So if we can literally, and this is one practice we can all do, if we can learn how to properly box breathe, we can have focused attention. When we have focused attention, especially when we do breath hold retentions, in the Indian arts, it's called the pranayama breath, or kumbhaka, which is like breath hold techniques. And so when we go down that path of doing specific breathing techniques, which we talk about in the Breathe program, and it's also in the M21 guide that I would love to give to your audience, like, we can all learn how to do this in less than 7 minutes. And no, it's not get 7-minute abs. Okay. It's like calm yourself down and be in your body and feel safe to manage whatever stress load is happening in 7 minutes or less. And I truly believe that. It's not just some marketing gimmick. Like, you can actually do it in about 7 minutes. That's the framework that I built. And then after that comes meditative breathing. And so this type of breath work is more proactive. It's like washing your car, changing the oil, lubricating the gears. That's what this does for us. And I'll tell you, anybody that has trouble sitting still and meditating, I promise you, when you start integrating, especially when you start integrating the Safe Vape CBD that we use. So I developed this protocol called Wellness CBD Breathing, where I use James Solverdina's company, and it's called Bio CBD Plus, and we use some CBD in the processes for meditative breathing. You will be amazed at what creativity and what self-realization and what peace you can find within yourself when you give yourself about 20 to 21 minutes to do proper breath hold retentions with a mixture of either box or circular breathing. So first phase is where you're going through acute stress, where you're met with a stressor. It's like, how do you get over the stressor? Whether it's in the car, on a stage, or with your spouse. The second stage is more meditation breathing and more proactive breath work. And then the third stage, what most people get this wrong, is they start at the third stage, and that's catharsis breathing. Catharsis breathing is like the Wim Hof, the long 60, 90-minute journeys. But I actually don't believe that people should start there, just like I don't believe people should start with the MEO, the 5-MEO. But you had some good training, right? So it prepared you to do that. If you've never done breath work before, start with the acute stress management and practice that. Feel the benefits of that. Or maybe you can self-select and go, I really don't meditate because I can't sit still. Well, then start with the meditative breathing. And then if you are currently working with a skilled therapeutic practitioner, someone who's medically skilled, someone who really knows what they're doing, then go into the catharsis breathing. And that's the longer journey. So within those 3 lanes of breath work, that's how I built the Breathe, Breath, and Wellness program, because I thought, okay, we need breath work that isn't so esoteric, and we don't have to like wear a crystal around our neck and float on a mountain. Like, everybody needs to learn how to breathe for stress, how to breathe for meditation, and how to breathe for healing. And so that's what we've integrated into the program.
Excellent. So there's an interesting controversy that I've seen emerge around, I've had Patrick McKeown on my podcast, and
Yes.
he's got his take. He's into the Buteyko breathing type of stuff, and he's developed kind of his own methodology around that. And then you have a lot of people discovering the Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of little battle going on between them, because you have Wim Hof's kind of hyperventilation approach, and then the Patrick McKeown approach really warns against the deep breathing and hyperventilation stuff. I would give my take on it, but I don't want to digress too much. I want you to give your take on what you see as the disconnect here, or which side you think is right, or how both sides are right.
Well, I think they're all connected. It depends on the practitioner's ego. I'll just say that, because we all either have an ego that's not integrated or an ego that's integrated. When I look at both of those gentlemen, I think they have fairly integrated egos. I really do. I get a trustworthiness from both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key differentiator between Wim Hof and McKeown is that Wim Hof seems to me like a psychonaut. He seems like someone that has gone to the 4 and 5D. He hikes up a mountain with no shirt, Ari. With it's snowing outside. Okay, so that's not for everyone. So he seems to be more in the radical expression of the breath, and knowing his life work. His wife unfortunately passed away. She had a mental condition. It drove him to the cold. It drove him to the breath. It's funny. I'm just realizing this. The very same thing that drove me to the breath is the same thing that drives all of us to the breath, and that especially drove Wim Hof to the breath, and possibly McKeown. I don't know his story. I'm sure people can listen to your podcast with him on that. But what drives all of us to the breath is, can we love and trust ourselves even when we've been through trauma, even when we've been through the works really that life can give us? And I don't think that any approach is either right or wrong. I think that once we start understanding that there's only 3 things, there's an inhale, an exhale, and a hold. That's it. The breath work is not complicated. And honestly, if people learn in less than 3 weeks how to breathe, it's a tool they can take for their whole life. And we have so many people have done the program. They're like, oh my God, why was I not taught this earlier? I have a woman that messaged me on Instagram. She was like, I can't believe that no one ever taught me this, because I can literally use this every single time I'm arguing with someone. There's an athletic mindset to breathing, which is like Stig and McKeown, and even Nestor talks about this too, where people really go deep on the science and the biology and the physiology. And that's cool. I respect that. I like that. For me, my mission with my company and what I'm all about is, how is this going to help me discover physical and emotional intelligence so I can live my life well?
Mm-hmm.
That's our manifesto. That's our mantra.
Yeah.
That's in a way our unique selling proposition too. It's like, I don't have all the answers, but I will do everything in my power to articulate the truth of what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a pro and a con to either one. It's really, honestly, Ari, whatever teaching resonates with you. If you're the kind of person that likes the academic literature and you want to know the PubMed studies, or if you're the kind of woo person where you're like, I actually just feel like crying today and I need to let go of something. And so how do I do that? There's tools for the right time for all people. And it's really about building our internal faculty of intuition to know which training we go to and which we don't. I took Dr. Belisa Vranich's training from the breathing class. I thought it was extremely powerful, but she's very focused on breathing mechanics and 360 breathing and things like this. In the Breathe, Breath, and Wellness program, we talk about using it to just turn down the default mode network. That's really our main thing, Ari. We want to turn down the volume of our default mode network so that our amygdala, our PFC, and our posterior cingulate are working for us instead of against us. That's at the crux of what the program is built for.
Nice. What do you think of breath holding practices? And do you think that one needs to do them on the hold on the out breath or the in breath? I know there's some debate about this. It's become popular and common for people to say, no, it's really important to do the hold on the out breath. I want to say, from my personal experience, and I regularly play with both options, but I honestly feel like I do better work and get more benefit by doing breath holds on the inhale.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
And
because you're an energy
I
guy.
haven't really seen anybody talk about that, but that's
Okay.
my subjective experience. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I have so many thoughts on that. We could do a whole podcast on that. So what I know about the breath and our diaphragm is this. When we inhale, we are filling the balloon in our diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that sits right below our solar plexus. So when we inhale, we are pressing on the vagus nerve. When you physically push the back of the diaphragm on the vagus nerve, because it innervates down there, you are not only giving yourself a synergistic signal to relax, but you're giving yourself a tactile response to relax. So when you pull energy in through your nose, and I always believe that we should, whenever we're doing breath work of any kind, we always want to focus on breathing in through the nose. The reason is because there's spherical cores, and that treats the air so it pulls into our nasal cavity and it goes down to our lungs and it gives us the most proper airflow. When we breathe in through our nose, we're activating sympathetic. When we hold our breath, we're pushing on the vagus nerve. When we're able to sit with the hold on the inhale, we can use that vagal nerve toning, the vagus nerve toning, as our ally. The real training, in my opinion, is not that that's bad. I think that's amazing. But what we focus on in the Breathe program for Breathe, Breath, and Wellness is like, we want you to hold on the exhale, because whatever is stressing you out the most in your life, whether it's your spouse or your job or, stuff from your emotional inventory, we want you to be at peace and train yourself to be at peace on the exhale, because the exhale is the one that stimulates the biggest fear response. And so just like we do cold therapy, I have a sauna in my garage and I have a cold tank in my garage. Whenever I go into the cold after the heat, I always do a big inhale through my nose and then I go exhale through my mouth. And I don't do another inhale until I really, really have to do it, because I am training myself to not have the vagal tone, to not have the basically what you're doing is you're pulling energy up to your crown chakra. When you breathe in through your nose, it's right there behind me. When you breathe in through your nose, you are activating, you are opening your crown chakra. So you have a deep awareness of what's going on. I think for people that want more energy, because you're an energy man, doing the breath hold on the inhale is powerful. I mean, talk about energy. Dan Brule says that when you do an inhale and you do the proper breath hold techniques, you can have 300% more oxygen to your brain for almost a half an hour. So I think it's really powerful from an energy standpoint. for focused attention, for you to be able to do the hold on the inhale through your nose. But I believe that doing a toning of having a lot of cycles of warrior breathing, or just a quick inhale and exhale through your mouth. A lot of people call it super oxygenation or hypoxia, whatever badge you want to put on it. Doing 20 to 30 inhales and exhales through the mouth, and then practicing doing some box breathing with a really firm focus on the inhale, like a strong inhale. You can really start managing your stress, because what comes after that, and what we teach in the program, is can you do a 60, a 90, maybe even a 120-second hold after you've done the warrior breathing, after you've done the box breath? Can you be at peace on the exhale when there's no oxygen in your system, when your vagus nerve is not being pushed on, and when you don't have that surge of energy through your third eye? It's the same kind of training that we're doing in the cold, or that we're doing with the heat shock proteins. It's the exact same thing. So I think there's places for both. I don't think it's a either or. I think it's both. They're both complementary. Yeah. Having that the inhale through the nose is where you're pulling energy up, right? So what's coming up for you is more energy. When you practice, and I like to do the throat lock, which is Jalandhara. So you do the throat lock, you pull in your perineum, you pull in your abdomen. So it's 3 locks, and then you just hold. It's the same feeling that you would get if you were going to asphyxiate, or if you were going to drown or something. And it's in that moment that we can literally start to turn down the default mode network and go, you know what, I'm safe. I had a buddy over at the house and we were doing cold therapy, and I was like, say out loud, I'm safe. It's my buddy Ronnie Landis. Say out loud, I'm safe. And he's like, whoa, this doing cold's so much easier when I say out loud in the cold tank, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm good. I'm safe. So there's a lot of different tricks we can do.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that's a really nice insight into it. And one of the things that I think is probably the reason that I like to do that is I often do it while in the context of exercising. So I surf almost every morning. And while I'm surfing, while I'm paddling, while my heart rate is high, if I try and do a hold on the exhale, it often I can only get like 10 seconds.
Sure.
And if I do a hold on an inhale, I can often get like 30 paddles. So, and then the holds on the exhales just kind of exhaust me faster, and I feel like I just don't get much time of the actual breath hold. So I think that may be part of why I've moved in that direction. But if I do it at rest, while in a sauna or in a cold tub or something like that, probably quite different. And I get what you're saying about training the brain to be relaxed in a very stressful state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The box breathing, specifically the tactical breathing that Divine teaches, and really that most people teach, is to do like 5 inhale, 5 hold, 5 exhale, 5 hold, or whatever it is. You can play around with it for yourself. But what they're all trying to do is they're trying to ground and center the brain and the body so that it's not absorbing too much energy. When you start doing the circular breathing with no pauses, it's hard to get as grounded. So focused attention that we talk about in the program is about square breathing, box breathing. And then if you want more energy, more creativity, well, that's when we integrate the CBD and the safe vape and the circular breathing. So it's an exciting world, man. It's a really cool world. And like, I feel very fortunate to have found it. It was right freaking under my nose the whole time. And so I'm really excited about it. But again, like, it's about creating an internal locus of control and saying, hey, I'm committed to training myself in 3 weeks where I can actually use this tool as an ally, this breath as an ally. And you'll be surprised, man, what comes up for people. Yeah. Self-sabotage. I can't do this. I don't have time to breathe. It's like, okay, that's your program's running.
Yeah. So my last question to you, and thank you for going a bit overtime with me, is...
Oh, this is fun.
For me too. Yeah. So talk to me about, you focus quite a bit in your teachings on going inward rather than seeking arousal, seeking validation from the external world. And you have kind of a suite of tools and strategies to do that, and they need to be done in a certain order. So tell people about that system that you have.
So the system it has 6 parts. And I built it into the M21 guide, which is something I'd love to give to your audience. It's wellnessforce.com/M21. It's totally free. There's a breathing piece in there. These 6 pillars or these 6 activities, they're really just something that'll prime you to have energy throughout the day. And so you can start getting a grip of, what are the thoughts that I'm thinking? Why do I act the way that I act? And what are my results? And how can I take radical ownership for my own results in life? I mean, it really is as simple as that. Now, look, just because it's simple does not mean it's easy. Like, going down the path of any kind of self-growth or self-introspection is going to be hard. Your essential question was, what are these pillars or what are these pieces? And really what I like to say to people is, it's about your beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and actions. So there's a BTFA loop that comes together. And then there's also your eating, moving, breathing, and sleeping. And so we have the physical, we have the emotional. And within the emotional, I believe that we are a product of our beliefs and thoughts. You don't catch a feeling before you catch a thought. I heard a preacher say this on Facebook. I can't claim that for my own dude. I forget his name, but anyways, he was like, I didn't catch a feeling. He's like, I caught a thought and then I caught a feeling. Mm-hmm. But guess what catches our thoughts? It's our beliefs. So belief, thought, feeling, action, that's what's really going on for all of us. And so getting clear on that, I give you a journal process and the M21 to get clear on that. And then our breathing, moving, eating, and sleeping, hydration in the morning, making your bed so you're priming yourself for the day and really making sure that you're already activating your reward circuitry. And then taking this time for you to actually do breathing on a stool or on a meditation cushion. And I also believe in movement, specifically to open the hips. It's called a womb squat. So I teach you how to do that in there. And all these things are baked in. I took like 400 podcasts and I was like, what is everyone doing? Like, if I could distill it down to like the honey of what everyone's doing, what's like the handful of things that they're doing? And I believe it's these 6 practices. And I tested it for 3 months and we've gotten great feedback from the audience. And there's some special breath work in there. Now, there is 2 things that aren't in there that I'd like to share, and we direct people towards those. And that is, what is my connection to higher power? And what is my commitment to personal growth when it comes to finances? So money is a byproduct of our lives. We all operate with money. So we have to have loving energy and loving perspective about money. And we also have to have a connection with God. So those are the 8 branches of well-being, right? The ones that I mentioned before. And then the 2 extra are the relationship with money and also our connection to God, or our spiritual quotient.
Beautiful. And so you talk about meditation, breath work, and plant medicine, and these need to be done in a particular order.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that if someone is, and this is outside of the M21 guide, if someone is called to a plant medicine ceremony, it is so important for you to get really clear on how you breathe first and how you sit still with yourself first. So whether it's, I did a 10-day Vipassana in the desert, the order of operations is this: get really crystal clear on knowing the way that you breathe and using your breath as an ally. Then go and do a 10-day Vipassana, a weekend Vipassana, whatever it is. Do longer meditation sits. Then if you still feel called, then go to the plant medicine. Right? But do it in a way where you're really vetting out the practitioner. You're really taking your time. And I would say start with the lowest dose possible. Straight up. Start with the lowest dose possible and go from there. I'm not advocating it. All I'm saying is use it as a tool, because a hammer can kill you, but a hammer can build a house. So use that tool of plant medicine with the same respect, and prepare yourself with that breathing acumen and the meditation acumen, and then go to the plant medicine.
Beautiful. Josh, I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you again for the extra time. If you could leave people with 1 or 2 sort of key takeaways that they should come away with from this podcast, and there's been, I think, so many throughout this discussion. But if you could distill it down to like 1 or 2 things that you really want to leave people with, what would those be? Number 1, pause and breathe before speaking.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's a big one. I just did that naturally because I really care about my answer. So first of all, get clear on whatever is troubling you. That's the first thing. Have compassion and courageousness for yourself, and do an emotional inventory process. We put it in the M21 guide. Get clear on what's really troubling you, and then From there, cultivate the skills necessary to do the work of letting it go. And I'll be straight up with you. There's 3 things actually. Cultivate the awareness on how to love your fears and love the things that cause you stress and supposedly harm you. That's the big one, right? So pause, use the skills to go inward, like your breath, like sitting in meditation, but don't just intellectualize that. Like really go in and be mindful of what comes up for you, and be mindful of whatever's showing itself. Maybe it's memories from childhood. Maybe it's a deep awareness of a change you have to make. Have the courage to make the change and to straight up love yourself while you make the change. That's, if anything, what somebody can get from this conversation is, how can I fortify my own intelligence? How can I gather? How can I apply? And then how can I embody?
Beautiful. Josh, my new friend, thank you so much. This has really been a blast to have you on and to connect with you live in real time. I was going to say in person, but this is not in person. As we were saying before we started, this is the in person of 2021, is just to get on a live call with someone. So really a pleasure. I look forward to more conversations with you, and then let people know again where they can get that M21 download. It's wellnessforce.com/M21.
Yep. Wellnessforce.com/M21. It's 100% free. All the things in there is my gift to you. Now, the question is, are you doing it? So are you going to do it? So it's wellnessforce.com/M21.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, my friend. Look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at the Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next one.